drug violations, a great more degree of cooperation by being the central focus. Basically, Jann, the district attorney, is always considered the chief law enforcement officer for any judicial district, and so Don Milke has put this program together. The idea being that, let's not have Wheat Ridge working on their own and Lakewood working on their own. Let's coordinate through the hotline, through Terry's efforts and the like.
What's the difference? Let me ask you, what's the difference between, say, that hotline and, there's the crack hotline or the gang hotline, or there's what's the tips number? You call in if you have a Crime Stoppers. What makes yours special?
Ours is mainly for Jefferson County.
Okay.
And I might add that this coincides with a grant that we obtained, that the district attorney obtained, that we also have a computer network now. Oftentimes, narcotics detectives will work on an individual, Joe Doe. No other agency will work on this particular Joe Doe, or they may. And when I get this information, I punch it into the computer. All of the agencies in Jefferson County receive this information. Now they know that Pozzosa is working Joe Doe, and they can go back in their intelligence files and ascertain that they also had some information back maybe 2 years ago, maybe 6 months ago on the same individual. Now these two detectives or the two agencies can get together and compare notes and intelligence.
457-9951 is the talk number here on Addiction Free Radio. If you have any questions for my guest, Terry Pozzosa, a narcotics investigator for the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office, and he also mans the drug hotline there, and Mark Potler, who is a DA there. These are the guys that take care of the bad guys when they catch them, and they're there really to serve and protect us. And we haven't really had a lot of cops and district attorneys on our show before, so this is kind of an interesting dialogue. And I invite you to call in. The number, if you're out of state, it's area code 303-457-9951. 303-457-9951. Let's try a couple calls here, okay? We have an anonymous caller.
Hi, Jann. I really like your show, and I listen to it all the time, but I just wanted to ask a question. I'm really interested in the topic tonight, and I wanted to know what you would do if there was a drug dealer living next to you, and, if you were really afraid, because, what would you do? Who would you call or something? Could you answer that for me?
Okay, well, why don't I won't answer it, but I'll let Terry answer it, and maybe let Mark have a shot at it. That's a good question. That's a heck of a good question.
Well, when
she's afraid.
Well, I don't blame her, and she has every reason to be. And when you call in, we need information, of course, that's pertinent to the case itself. We need more information than what you think we do, and that's why we prefer to talk to you directly rather than leaving a message on the recorder. We need times the traffic is taking place. We need license plates, description of the driver of the vehicle that got out. What time? What's the prevalent time that people show up? Is it on the weekends? Is it after 6? Does the individual work? His exact address. There's a lot of information that we need and that we can get during a conversation with you.
Well, I think to add to that, we're not asking the citizens to do our work for us,
right?
But we do need the information. We don't, have that many people. As far as the anonymous caller, we're eventually going to need some information. But the law does provide that we can keep confidential the information received and the party it was received from. Let's say that you have a next-door neighbor who is pushing some kind of drugs. You contact us, you give us some information, and depending on the resources and the information, we can then take that and run with it in such a fashion that we'll get a successful result in getting the drug bust and the prosecution, and a citizen informant such as yourself, there's no necessity under law to reveal that information. We take that information, we build on it, and the original information would remain confidential.
We're going to take some breaks here on Addiction Free Radio. The number 457-9951. We've got one line open anyways right now. My guest's Terry Pizzosa, an undercover narcotics investigator with Jefferson County. He also mans the drug hotline there. And Mark Potler, who is a chief deputy district attorney. We'll be back.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to lay to rest someone very special to all of us.
No one ever expected this to happen, myself included. Everything was so perfect.
She was so pretty.
School was never a problem. Friends were never a problem. But things weren't perfect. They never were.
Why didn't I notice?
No one saw the signs. They couldn't imagine their daughter, their sister, their friend, doing such a terrible thing. Binge purging.
I had no idea.
They didn't notice the food missing, the shoplifting, the dark circles under the eyes, or the frequent trips to the bathroom. No one knew how serious the problem was. Not even me. Until I died.
It's not your fault. You're not alone. The Rader Institute. 1-800-255-1818.
Does someone you know or someone you love have a drug or alcohol problem? Bowling Green of Colorado can help.
Alcoholism really is a disease. That means the person who has it didn't cause himself to get it by drinking too much. In fact, it's just the opposite. He drinks too much because he has the disease. And asking him to just drink a little less or control his drinking is asking too much. You see, alcoholism is a disease like any other disease. You can't use willpower to control it or cure it by trying harder. And promising to get well is like promising not to have cancer. The person who has alcoholism needs treatment. But the good news is that with treatment and abstinence, the alcoholic can recover.
You don't have to want help to get help. Call Bowling Green of Colorado. 333-55.
Back here on Addiction Free Radio. You're with Jan Scott this evening here in the Mile High City. The talk number is area code 303-457-9951. We're talking about busting dealers and the drug hotline in Jefferson County. My guest, Terry Pizzosa, a narcotics investigator, undercover narcotics cop for Jefferson County, and Mark Potler, who's a district attorney there. The talk number is 457-9951. If you have any questions for these gentlemen, you are certainly welcome to call. We'll take any and all callers, any and all questions, especially, if you wanted to talk to somebody who is a district attorney or a policeman and somebody who's dealing in drugs all the time. This is the time to get your calls in. We've got these guys here, and they're not going to charge any money either. This is free advice, and some of it really pretty good, about what to do if you know somebody who's dealing. And I guess the one thing I really need to clarify, too, from my position here on Addiction Free Radio, I don't care if people drink. I don't care if people take drugs. I mean, it is against the law. What I do care about is the fact that we are losing our society, I say, to crack, cocaine, and a lot of bad drugs. I do care when people are harmed. And I have to tell you, a couple of years ago, I would not be the kind of person who would really be interested in dialoguing with law enforcement. You start to lose a city to gangs. You start to rethink your priorities. You start to rethink your morals. You know, and I'm here to tell you, I made some pretty big mistakes in my life, and I invite you to call in tonight and get involved in this program. Be part of the dialogue. We really need to talk. We all need to talk about this addiction epidemic. Let's start. Tell us about this the hotline. Are you getting any action on it there, Terry?
Yeah, we are, Jan. It's working out pretty good. Different leads on different places, different people within Jefferson County, and yeah, I'd say it's working out real good.
Have you gotten any specific kind of calls that you'd like to you could share in a general way with us or with the audience?
I received one last week, and it was from a young girl, 18 years old. She's been addicted to cocaine since she was 14, and it's really kind of a tragic story. When I asked her, you know, cocaine is a very expensive drug. It goes for street value is about $100 a gram, which really isn't very much. She became addicted while working as a waitress at 14. She was a bus girl in a restaurant, and the manager got her started, and it wasn't long before she was addicted. I would say, according to her, it was about a week and a half. And she always had a mental need for this, and one thing led to another, and pretty soon her dealer, or the manager at the restaurant, demanded that she start paying for it. Well, she couldn't pay for it, and being a very pretty little girl, she started trading it for sex. Then
that's usually the way it happens, isn't
it? Yeah, it is. And so she went from there to shoplifting, and then she left home. She lived with different people. She told me that she got into slamming it, which is a street term for intravenous, right, shooting it. And she was shooting 9 times an hour. Her and her boyfriend were, and incidentally, her boyfriend is approaching 40.
How did she happen to call you? How did she end up? Why did she call?
Well, she's on a program now, and she just really feels that she'd like to do something for society. She's been taken away for so long, and she just was really on a guilt trip.
Oh, so she's in a drug treatment program.
Yes, she is, and she's doing really well, I might add. But when you figure, she also said that her and her boyfriend would, every morning, would buy 100 syringes, and by 7 o'clock at night, they'd be out of them. So when you figure she's shooting up 9 times an hour, you can imagine the expense there. And
I know, it's mind-boggling.
It really is.
457-9951 is the talk number. We're talking about busting dealers here on Addiction Free Radio. The Jefferson County Drug Hotline is what we're really talking about. My guests are Terry Pizzosa, narcotics investigator for the county, and Mark Potler, Chief Deputy District Attorney. Okay, Mark, you had some information that you wanted to share with me about. Were these cases that came in off the hotline, or just...
No, basically, when you were doing your intro, I was reminded of 3 cases we're looking at filing right now. One of my jobs is to be responsible for the filings as they come into the office, Jann. And been at this business 14 years, and I don't think I get shocked too much anymore, but we're looking at filing 3 cases right now, 2 of them dealing with young ladies who have children, and the children have been born addicted. Looking at a child abuse theory as far as that's concerned. And then we're looking at one 18-month-old whose parents apparently were snorting cocaine. They must have left it in on a bed. The child rolled over apparently and ingested it, and maybe brain damaged. You know, the old theory of everybody can go to hell in their own fashion just doesn't pay when you're looking at the kids affected as we're seeing now. One of the things that the hotline is not just obviously dealing with cocaine, but any substances. And one of the things we find at the district attorney's office that if we find a burglar who is doing multiple burglaries, I have yet to see a case in my 4 years in Jefferson County where that burglar is not doing those multiple cases a day burglaries a day to support a drug habit.
You bet.
And so the old concept that drugs are a victimless crime, it's not fact.
457-9951 is the talk number here on Addiction Free Radio. If the lines are busy, which they may very well be at this point, just keep trying. We'll get through. We'll take your calls here in just a couple seconds. I want to ask you about this, Mark. So up until this point, if a woman has a child and the kid has let's say he's addicted to heroin or cocaine or whatever, children, those people have not been prosecuted in the past?
Well, I can only speak for Jefferson County, and
Okay.
we very frankly haven't seen any. Maybe it's a happenstance. We saw got reports within the last month, and so we're going to deal with them.
Working
as we
around
see.
the drug and alcohol field, for the past 14 years myself, I've talked to a lot of addicts, women addicts, who have gotten into recovery, and one of the things they say, if they're married or if they have kids, is that, my kid was born, and when he was born, he had to kick cocaine, and I was really concerned. You talk about guilt and that kind of thing, and I see it a lot. So maybe that might be a deterrent, huh?
Yeah, one of the issues involved is we have to prove a mental culpability of knowing, and in the particular case that we're dealing with, there was some prenatal care, and the individuals knew of the results if they continued their addiction, and I think that's going to be the most important factor in these cases.
Okay, let's see. We have another anonymous caller here. Let's go to, I love anonymous callers. Let's go to an anonymous caller.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, I was wondering, out of how many arrests that you make, how many cases are prosecuted?
Good question.
In Jefferson County, not only the district attorney's office and law enforcement, but we're very happy to say the courts have taken a very strong stance against controlled substances, and depending on the type of case, obviously, if we're talking a possession case, we may take a different stance on it. But generally, anytime we're dealing with distribution or sale, the district attorney's policy for the past 3 years has been that we will not plea bargain. The individual can enter a plea of guilty to the highest charge, which is a Class 3 felony in Colorado, for distributing, or that we go to trial. And when we go to trial, the judges have been just as forceful in Jefferson County in giving prison sentences. We're proud of our record over the past 3 years.
So you're prosecuting all of them? All the busts or close to it, if there's enough evidence to substantiate?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Are you pretty happy with that?
Oh, most definitely. They plead guilty or they go to trial. That's it.
Well, now that's different because you've heard so many times. Actually, it's pretty interesting to have a DA sit down here with a cop. I mean, it's traditionally, maybe not where you guys are from, but I've certainly heard, the police say, well, we arrest these guys and then the district attorneys plea bargain them away. And what's the point? I mean, that's not the case here.
Jefferson County DA's office really works tight with the cops.
I'm impressed with this hotline too. This is the first one that I've seen that's specifically like that. And it's sort of like the girl that you mentioned who got into a program and wanted to now make some contribution to society back. I have the feeling that's probably going to be the wave of the future. You will see former drug dealers and former addicts clean up, and then they will help just by a phone call.
The law enforcement and the community have got to work together. We can't do it by ourselves.
Let's see, we're going to go to Giselle in Evergreen. You're on Addiction Free Radio. Hi.
Hi, Jan.
Hi.
We have a two-parter here. The second part is more important than the first part, but I'm curious, how can somebody do a drug like cocaine 9 times an hour and still survive it?
Well,
To the girl earlier.
You're asking me that?
One of the gentlemen, one of your guests, had mentioned that this girl had been doing it 9 times an hour.
I suppose it depends on the amount of cocaine you're shooting into your arm. A lot of times, people get into needles, they get into a needle fix. I know people that just walk around all day long with a syringe stuck in their knuckles or in their arm. Maybe if we have some recovering drug addicts listening to the program tonight, if you dare.
Only because it seems to diminish the toxicity of it. I mean, it doesn't seem to be so life-threatening if you can be doing this. I mean, this is just my ignorance showing.
You know,
See what I'm saying?
Here, have a listen.
Just recently I interviewed a addict that we busted on a 2-kilo deal, and he was really strung out when we took him off, and 3 days later we talked to him, and he didn't remember a thing that we talked about. He told me that when he would go out for dinner, he never liked to leave the house because he was leaving his source of supply. But he would go to dinner, and prior to going out to dinner, he would shoot up. He would fix 3 syringes to take with him, and by the time he left the restaurant, he would have shot up his 3rd syringe, and he would race home to fix another one.
Amazing. All right, well, here's the second part of the question. It seems to be general knowledge here in Evergreen that the schools are really infected with drugs. I mean, everybody that lives up in this area has heard horrendous stories about the junior and senior highs, and yet there seems to be no publicity about what the law enforcement efforts are in this town. And, I mean, how do we end this absurdity up here?
That's a very tough question. We've thought about infiltrating the high school with officers that...
Evergreen in particular, or just in general?
I would say in general.
Okay.
We've gotten an awful lot of reports about Evergreen.
Let me interject something too, okay? Evergreen is a mountain town, and it's a small western town, and it holds the western tradition like Lyons or Ward or Nederland, and people hide out up there. I think what we have, this is my personal opinion, what we have in Colorado is similar to what you had with the bootleggers back in the South during Prohibition, and even in the 30s and 40s and 50s.
But Jan, these kids are not, they're not hiding, they're not, physically hiding themselves. You can see these punkers.
I know, it's an illusion.
There's a 7-Eleven up here that's reportedly an area where drugs are transacted. So they're visible. I mean, these kids are not being really, what I'd say, discreet. They're really drawing attention to themselves. I don't want to generalize that all punkers are doing drugs.
Go ahead,
But unfortunately, the schools are the hardest to work because the age of the individuals going into the school, they can't find young-looking police officers. And you're talking junior high, it's virtually impossible. If we don't have some students come forward or some parents come forward with
how can you entice some straight kids? I mean, I was straight in high school and had some cop come to me and said, let's talk about drugs.
Okay, listen.
And I was really frightened about it. I would think there would be more kids similar that would want to talk, that would want to say, hey, let's clean this up, or parents that know that maybe this is a particular crowd. I just don't understand why there isn't a way.
Well, there is a way, and we hope that this hotline is a way. People have to come forward. Like I said before, the community and the law enforcement community have to work together. We can't do it by ourselves. Somebody has to come forward and say, he is dealing, I purchased from him, or my kid purchased from him, and that's the way it's got to go. It is a dilemma.
I was sitting on the bus going down to Denver, and next to a woman who I'd never seen before, and she starts talking to me about her kids, that they just moved the kid out of the Evergreen High School down to Golden as a transfer student because the kids were talking about all the drugs that are going down in the school.
Okay, listen, Giselle, listen to me for a second. I want you to hear something, because this is important, and you raise a very important question. I am here to tell you that a lot of people live in mountain communities like Evergreen and Conifer and, Ward would be an extreme example, Nederland. Okay, they live in the mountains to hide out. A lot of drug dealers live in the mountains. A lot of alcoholics live in the mountains. Now, I'll tell you how I know that. I've gone and worked in some of the schools in mountain towns, and I won't tell you where we've done workshops with the kids, and the kids, in answering their own questionnaires, have come up with the fact that their parents have upwards of 80 to 90% drug and alcoholism rates. People in the late 60s and 70s, in the mountain communities around the Denver metro area, a lot of people who wanted to hide out with drugs and alcohol moved to the mountains. And I'm telling you, it is no wonder that Evergreen would have what you would say an extreme drug problem. You bet, and it's the same in every mountain town. They're not any different. You go talk to the
Is it just
principal.
cost prohibitive for the cops to do, like, what 60 Minutes do with these hidden cameras and their vans that kind of scope
But
out
they need
the
help.
neighbors?
Okay.
Because, there are locales around Evergreen where, anybody driving by would suspect this is what's shaken down here.
Giselle, we have to work on a thing that's called probable cause. And we've got to have a lot of probable cause to put on an affidavit for a judge to sign a particular warrant, search warrant. We know these things are going on.
Yeah.
We can see these deals going down, but we need more. Maybe Mark, you'd want to say something concerning
Look,
probable
let's
cause.
save this. We got to take another break. They're waving at me in there, and we got phone lines backed up here. So listen, I want to thank you for your call, Giselle.
Welcome.
Okay, we'll be back here on Addiction Free Radio. We're talking about busting the dealers.
Does someone you know or someone you love have a drug or alcohol problem? Bowling Green of Colorado can help.
Alcoholism affects more than just the person who has the disease. It affects the whole family. There's confusion and anger, misunderstandings and hurt. Often the family has stopped communicating. The closeness that once existed has disappeared. We understand. That's why we provide treatment for everyone close to the alcoholic. Husbands, wives, children, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, everyone joins together for treatment. And the results are wonderful. Families learn to trust again. Soon they're working together, helping each other. There's lots of hugging, even laughter. And it all starts with love.
You don't have to want help to get help. Call Bowling Green of Colorado. 333-5540. 333-5540.
Why don't you just listen to us? Then you wouldn't be in this much trouble all the time.
And why are you always trying to pry into my life?
It's natural for parents and teenagers to have a few differences of opinion. After all, adolescence isn't easy, and there's no perfect way to be a parent. But if you're not careful, that natural communication gap can grow wider and wider.
If he lives in my house, he's gonna live by my rules.
They don't care about me. They just worry about what their friends think.
Then you realize you're not talking to each other. You're talking about each other.
Oh, I don't understand why he's acting like this. I never did that.
If they really love me, they'd let me do what I want.
There's no use. He'll never change.
If you think your teenager has a problem with drugs, alcohol, school, or maybe you, call Mercy Medical Center. We can tell you if it's just a phase, or if it's serious enough to get our help. Call Mercy at 393-3023, because growing up doesn't have to make parents and children grow apart.
Okay, we're back here on Addiction Free Radio. You're with Jann Scott this evening. Addiction Free Radio is the only call-in talk show in America, certainly in Colorado. Actually, it's the only one in America about drugs, alcoholism, eating disorders, adult children of alcoholics. Tonight we're talking about busting the dealers. We are also the recipient of Westward's Best Talk Show Award in Denver. Can you believe that? I couldn't believe they gave me the best of anything. 457-9951 is the talk number here on Addiction Free Radio. My guests are Terry Pizzoza, a narcotics investigator with Jefferson County. He also mans the drug hotline, which is the only drug hotline that I know of that's gotten started anywhere here in Colorado. Also, Mark Potler, he's a district attorney with Jeffco, is here. Is this the only drug hotline? I mean, I know there's the crack hotline, but
This is the only hotline in Jefferson County.
in Jefferson County. Okay, and Jefferson County includes what? It includes Evergreen, I guess, huh?
Yes, it does. And Gilpin County. It's within the first judicial district, which is Gilpin County, and that includes Blackhawk and Central City.
You know, our last caller, I mean, we were talking here during the break that, and maybe Mark, I'll just kind of put this over to you, that, you know, you said it's frustrating because people are concerned And what can we do? I know you guys have limited resources, so what can the public do? And maybe both of you can answer that, but that seems to be the issues that keep coming up here.
Well, I think the major emphasis of what the public can do is, was the purpose of the hotline, was to give some kind of vehicle for the public to call. We have certain lines where people can call to get to find out where they can get help, in to dry out and all of these kinds of things. But as far
because they want help, but they don't know what to do. That's why when you call Centennial Peaks Hospital, the first thing I'll do is listen. Then together, we can figure out the next step. If you or someone you care about needs help with an alcohol or drug problem, call us now at Centennial Peaks Hospital at 673-9990. That's Centennial Peaks Hospital, 673-9990. Call now.
The fat guy's funny. And it wasn't funny after a while. It wasn't comfortable being funny. After a while, I didn't go to the parties anymore.
It's not your fault.
It was easier just to stop by the drive-thru and go home.
You're not alone.
And eat some more.
The Rader Institute, AMI. 1-800-255-1818.
Have you ever seen The Elephant Man? And that's what I feel like. Somebody who's good inside. Somebody who has a lot to offer. Somebody could offer a lot to your life, probably. That you let the chance go by because of the weight or what you see.
It's not your fault.
Even when I'm in a show and it's a designated seat and somebody has to sit next to me, they won't sit there like it will rub off on them.
You're not alone. The Rader Institute, AMI. 1-800-255-1818.
Are you embarrassed by someone else's drinking?
There are prevention programs, and we have to work on some kind of interdiction program. It's got to be a joint effort there. We talk about the problem in Evergreen. The Sheriff's Department has limited resources, which is the law enforcement agency that takes care of Evergreen. But the main thing is there's so much that's out there. We have limited resources, but we also have a limited means to get information. And if people are willing to call, give that 278-6000 hotline number, and at least by finding out what's going on in a community, then we can take some kind of action.
The usefulness of this hotline will be validated by how much response we get.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, and I hope that that you get more exposure with this. I'll tell you one thing: we're on 5 nights a week, and I'm certainly committed to working with law enforcement on this program so that we can kind of get the job done. I mean, I'll be darned if I want to lose this city to thugs and criminals. Foster Cline, the noted child psychologist, predicted 5 years ago that we would start to lose inner core cities. Well, actually, it was around 82. And then he named them. And he named Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles. And we have lost those cities. I mean, some of the law enforcement tactics that go on in those cities right now, I mean, they are out of control with drug dealers. Denver, I think, is around 15th on the list, according to the recent study that I read, as far as cities that have, in terms of number of arrests and an increase in drug-related crimes and all that kind of stuff. 457-9951. We've got about 20 minutes left here on Addiction Free Radio. Get your calls in early if you want to get them in, because the time goes by quickly. My guests are, again, Terry Pizzoza, undercover narcotics investigator, and Mark Potler, who's a district attorney, both from Jefferson County. Okay, we have another anonymous caller. Let's take that call now. This guy's been hanging on for a while.
Yeah, I'm a drug dealer, and I'd just like you to know that there's no way you're never going to catch me. I don't care how undercover you get. There's no way you're going to catch me. I deal so much drugs, and I make so much money, but you're never going to catch me.
Keep going. I love it.
Nice call. He hung up.
I love it.
You heard? I knew we'd get one of those guys calling.
You know, it was kind of a funny thing being undercover. I've done a lot of undercover work, and it'd really be slick to hear these guys say, you know, when we'd be doing the deal in a car someplace, and they'd say, hey, you know, I think you're cool. I can smell a pig a mile away.
But then every time they get arrested, the response is, oh, I knew you were a cop. I knew you were a cop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's always that way. Oh, I had a feeling you were a cop.
I love it. I was expecting sooner or later we get somebody like that. We always get those calls. We always get the anonymous callers here on Addiction Free Radio. A lot of people call in out of fear. This guy, of course,
Another mental giant.
He didn't want to be stupid. Well, in fact, let's talk about, can we talk about this, what it's like to be an undercover cop and work on narcotics? I mean, we watch, you know, the cop shows like Miami Vice and Hill Street, and I have really no idea, and I think the general public would kind of like to know.
I really get into the job. I love undercover work, and it's a matter of thinking like they do. They're extremely paranoid, and they're always looking over their shoulder. You know, that's one of the things that you can really spot about a drug dealer is that not necessarily his dress, but most definitely his paranoia. As far as the buys itself, a lot of them come from introductions, what we call cold hits, people that are obviously drug dealers, and it's just a matter of getting into their heads.
How do you do that? I mean, how do you live two different lives like that?
Well, I think everybody does in some way. You know, maybe the stockbroker does the same thing.
Stockbrokers do a lot of cocaine, I know that. and then they steal people's money, but I won't get into that one tonight. No, go ahead.
You know, I just talked to my doctor, and he was telling me how he got a divorce, and I hadn't seen him for several years. And he said that his divorce was due to really getting into his job. I mean, every moment he was there, and he had something like 8 or 9 kids, and he was devoted to his job. He would come home, and he'd be a different person. And I think that's the way most narcs are.
You have to be an actor in a way, don't you, or do you not?
A lot of it is acting, you know, and it's kind of it's a challenge to put yourself on their level and think like they do. You've got to be able to rap with them, and
well, you have to be able to act kind of nerdy the way. I mean, both you guys are gentlemen. I mean,
it depends on who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of nerds out there, and but then there are some sharp individuals, very very sharp individuals, and they're business people. They're out there to make big bucks. That's what's keeping the drug business going. Money.
Now, when you work with somebody like that, are these guys high? I mean, are the dealers like, you know?
At times, you know, speeders seem to be high all the time, and you know, I hate to be redundant, but a lot of them are businessmen. They're there to make the bucks.
I mean, they're straightforward businessmen. They're not taking the stuff. They're not involved in the substance, or?
That's correct.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's interesting because I don't hear that a lot. Most people I hear that are dealers are just they got way too into drugs.
Well, you have a street dealer, and then you have somebody that's in it for the financial gain. The person that's in it for the financial gain is, you know, he's looking at purchasing a kilo for $14,000, $12,000, and he hopes to break that up into grams and what we call 8 balls, which is 1/8 of an ounce. And he can turn that $12,000, maybe he can triple that. So we're talking about a businessman.
457-9952 here on Addiction Free Radio. If you have any questions for my guests, Terry Pizzosa, our undercover narcotics investigator, and Mark Potler, who's a district attorney with Jeffco, the Jefferson County, and they started the Jefferson County Drug Hotline. The first one like it, really, in Denver that's specifically about you calling in with information about drug dealing. I say here on Addiction Free Radio that this is going to be the wave of the future. It's going to take former dealers, people who have been involved, once they clean up, a way to pay their debt to society can be through a hotline. How about you, Mark? Do you get involved in undercover work at all yourself, or you have to, or from a staging point of view, or from logistics, or?
Well, the few times in my past when I've done it, you do have to be an actor, and you have to have a higher degree of intestinal fortitude than I found that I have. I can speak in court, but trying to do it on that kind of level. I think the main idea of having a cooperative effort between the district attorney and the law enforcement, it makes for better cases because we have a district attorney at hand at all times, and he can make sure that we're doing the proper legal approach. The other thing that we really look at, Jann, very hard in Jefferson County is, as Terry's talking about these businessmen, the law now provides some very substantial, a very substantial method to not only incarcerate the individuals who are distributing drugs, but also to take their property under the public nuisance law to civil forfeiture. We've become very active in that. We're doing about 70 cases a year. It's very seldom that we do a drug bust so we don't take the guy's car or home or whatever. If we can take the purse out of it, if we can take the economic incentive out of it, any one of us might say, okay, I'm willing to take a fall and go down to Canyon City for 2 years if when I get back I've got a couple $1 million. Well, if we can take that couple $1 million up front and still send them to Canyon City, then we've taken the incentive out, and I think we're going to have a much stronger result. So,
well, except for the guys that you have putting the money in coffee cans in back of their houses that you never find them.
Well,
and they get out and
we miss a few of those, but the good businessmen are investing the money in other things, and the whole money laundering idea. And basically, we have some legislation forward this year on money laundering. We're just trying to take a full gamut approach rather than just say, okay, let's put them in jail. Let's put them in jail. Let's take their assets, and let's really show that there's no profit in this business.
We're talking about busting dealers tonight and the Jeffco hotline, the drug hotline. The phone number here on Addiction Free Radio is area code 303-457-9951. If you're calling out of state, it's 303-457-9951 on Addiction Free Radio. We'll be back right after this.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to lay to rest someone very special to all of us.
No one ever expected this to happen, myself included. Everything was so perfect.
She was so pretty.
School was never a problem. Friends were never a problem. But things weren't perfect. They never were.
Why didn't I notice?
No one saw the signs. They couldn't imagine their daughter, their sister, their friend, doing such a terrible thing. Binge purging.
I had no idea.
They didn't notice the food missing, the shoplifting, the dark circles under the eyes, or the frequent trips to the bathroom. No one knew how serious the problem was. Not even me. Until I died.
It's not your fault. You're not alone. The Rader Institute. 1-800-255-1818.
Does someone you know or someone you love have a drug or alcohol problem? Bowling Green of Colorado can help.
Alcoholism affects more than just the person who has the disease. It affects the whole family. There's confusion and anger, misunderstandings and hurt. Often the family has stopped communicating. The closeness that once existed has disappeared. We understand. That's why we provide treatment for everyone close to the alcoholic. Husbands, wives, children, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, everyone joins together for treatment. And the results are wonderful. Families learn to trust again. Soon they're working together, helping each other. There's lots of hugging, even laughter, and it all starts with love.
You don't have to want help to get help. Call Bowling Green of Colorado. 333-5540. 333-5540.
Okay, we're back here on Addiction Free Radio. You're with Jan Scott this evening. My guest, Terry Pizzosa, an undercover narcotics investigator, and Mark Potter, who is the Chief Deputy District Attorney for Jefferson County. We're talking about the new drug hotline. And let me give you that number right now. For Jefferson County, it's 278-6000. It's manned. People answer the phone even, right?
Right. If we can't, we have an answering service. And also, I give my pager number.
Okay, would you tell me, Terry, about a raid? What's it look like? I mean, we have a myth. What's the difference between the myths of an undercover, narcotics officer and what actually happens in a raid?
Prior to, of course, it takes, and getting back to Giselle, it takes a lot of probable cause to get the search warrant. We have to write out a lengthy affidavit in order to get a judge to say, yeah, you have enough probable cause for me to sign this, and I will give you permission or an order to enter the residence. I would say that the common denominator for the users is that they live in filth. The most important thing to them is where they're going to get their next fix, and whether it's cocaine going up their nose or whether it's heroin going in their arm.
Well, what do you mean by that they live in filth?
Well, for example, the last raid that we did, or search warrant that we executed, there was no back door, and we've been really experiencing some cool weather, but that really wasn't that important to them. There was there's food that has been on the table for weeks. The oven is just has got stuff splashed all over it.
So you're talking about sick addicts who have to rob and steal. You're talking about junkies.
We're talking really filth.
Really filth, yeah.
Just extreme filth.
I mean, God, it sounds like really sick people to me. I mean, those. What about dealers? Let's talk about the life of a dealer. Is that? I mean, is it the same thing, or?
No, a high-class dealer is. I hate to be redundant, but extremely paranoid. But they're driving BMWs. They're driving nice cars, nice clothes, gold chains, that sort of thing. High rollers, big spenders, good-looking women.
457-9951 is the talk number here on Addiction Free Radio. You got 5 minutes to get your calls in. We have, let's see, one line open. Let's finish up some of the calls here. We're going to go to Armanda in Lakewood. You're on Addiction Free Radio. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. What can we do for you tonight?
I have a question for Terry.
Okay.
I'm wondering, is he at all concerned about blowing his cover by being on a radio station like this, exposing his voice, his name, where he works?
No, this is radio, it's not television, so I'm not really concerned about that. If somebody can pick up my voice, no, I'm not really worried about that.
Okay, and my second question: are you, with your tip line, are you more interested in the big dealers, or are you concerned about the small dealers in the area as well?
Both. I'm just as we all want to make the big kilo bust, but no, we're really concerned about the small dealers, like Giselle was talking about the 7-Eleven and the kids there in Evergreen openly dealing. No, we're really interested in that.
So you have no objection to small-time tips?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
You got one?
Oh, not right now, and if I did, I don't think I'd give it on the radio.
No, I was just curious if you...
We're calling the tip line, so you can keep repeating that number. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, it's 278-6000.
Thank you.
I think what we're interested in is getting the community involved and letting us know what's going on.
I think this is a wonderful idea. Good luck to you. I'm sure you get a lot of response.
Thank you for your call.
Thanks, Amanda.
Bye.
It's 457-9951 is the talk number here on Addiction Free Radio. We're talking about busting dealers tonight. 457-9951. My guest, Terry Pizzosa, an undercover narcotics investigator, and Mark Podler, Chief Deputy District Attorney. You know, in pointing out Evergreen, I just don't want to point out Evergreen because Evergreen is typical. It's a typical town I was talking with someone up at PDAP the other day, and we were talking about having special meetings for teenage drug addicts who are in recovery at the youth center in Longmont. And they said, no way, we're not going to have meetings for kids who are recovering at the youth center because there's more dealing going on at the youth center. A kid's never going to get off of drugs. And Longmont's got the same problem. Boulder's got the same problem. Lyons has got the same problem. I mean, we're talking about an American epidemic here.
We are.
Absolutely.
And that's why I say we've got to get the community involved.
And the community has to get involved with law enforcement. I think some of the myths is that the cops are somebody to fear, or the district attorneys. I mean, we have this, if you're driving your car and you break a law, you're kind of afraid of the black and white. When the black and white officer's going to give me a ticket or whatever, and there's that distancing. And I see it more and more and more. I mean, I'm even a part of that myself, and I think, we have a big problem. And the problem is when it all goes down and things are a mess and they're out of control, who do you call? You call the cops. And whatever it is, it ends up in your lap.
Yes, it does.
I think historically what you're saying is accurate, that we've had kind of a gap developed between law enforcement and the community, and that's exactly one of the things we're trying to do here, is to bridge that gap and
in the 60s.
get that two-way communication going.
We used to have a tremendous gap between departments.
Mm-hmm.
Thornton wouldn't share with Denver, Denver wouldn't share with Arvada and so forth, and all that has changed now, especially with this new computer system that we're working on now.
457-9951 is the talk number here on Addiction Free Radio. If you have any calls, you've got about 4 minutes to get them in. Let's see, we're going to go right now to Edward in Denver. You're on Addiction Free Radio. Hi.
Hi. I'm a Christian and I'm also an addict.
Okay.
And I was wondering, do you think it's right to be an undercover narcotics officer and be a Christian because of the deception involved?
No, I really don't. Well, how do you feel about it?
I've been struggling with it because I'm interested in law enforcement.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I've been struggling with it because I'm interested in law enforcement, and I still don't have an answer.
Well, my answer is no.
Well, unfortunately, you're not dealing with, upright Christians. You're dealing with people who are committing crimes, and none of us want to go down and wallow with them in the mud, but at the same time, we have to take the means necessary. I can recall the sheriff up in Pitkin County in Aspen some years ago when Terry and I were with the Organized Crime Strike Force, and they didn't want to do undercover investigations. They thought that was deceptive, and they didn't want to use, confidential informants. But the problem is, it's the only way to get the job done. I'm not saying the end justifies the means, and I'm not saying we do anything illegal to make an arrest, but often, when you're dealing with people like that, you've got to get down and dirty with them, and but staying inside the law.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your call, Edward. We appreciate it. That's a really good point too. I lost my thought, but it has to do with. I know. I was going to ask you, Terry, where do you draw the line from Terry? I guess it has to do with being a professional, huh?
Well, I think it comes automatically.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. I have a job to do. It feeds the family. I like my job. I really like what I do. I've investigated probably every crime there is to investigate. Narcotics is my bag.
Mm. And so you have to have good fiber, good character. I mean, in order to not get just swept one way or the other. No, I mean, or to be damaged emotionally or mentally by it. Do you have any thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, I don't. Obviously, one of the things that you can't leave people too long in an undercover position because it is unnatural. But at the same time, you have to have individuals who have that kind of striving to attempt to cure a problem. And we were just in Jefferson County recently, prosecuted a police officer who had taken some narcotics and some money, and he had gone the wrong way, but he didn't have that kind of fiber that you referred to, Jann, to begin with, in my estimation.
Yeah.
And you in this business, you got to kind of watch your undercover officers somewhat closely, and make sure that they're not getting burned out and
we're just about out of time. We've got, we have a whole bunch of calls here. I'm not going to be able to take them all, but I do want to get Nicole. She's 15, or he's 15. Go ahead, Nicole from Littleton. You're on Addiction Free Radio.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, for the people that do turn dealers in, if you have any protection for them, because, I'm sure some of them are really scared that the dealer is going to try to get them, because I'm sure they probably know who it is.
Nicole, we go out of our way to protect you, and your information is strictly confidential. We may talk to you on a daily basis, but your information is confidential. In no way will we give up your name or any information about you whatsoever.
The court process also provides for certain protections, Nicole.
Thanks for your call, Nicole.
Thank you.
We are out of time. Terry, Mark, thank you for being on the program tonight.
Thank you, Jan.
Really appreciate it.
Our
It's helped a
pleasure.
lot. 278-6000 is the number for the drug hotline in Jefferson County. We'll be back tomorrow night at 9 o'clock here on Addiction Free Radio.
You've been listening to Addiction Free Radio with your host, Jann Scott. Jann invites you to join him every night at 7 on most of these same stations. If you would like a cassette copy of tonight's show, send $3 check or money order in American currency to Jann Scott, Addiction Free Radio, Post Office Box 545, Lyons, Colorado, 80540, USA. That's Box 545, Lyons, Colorado, 80540, USA. Jann also welcomes any ideas or suggestions you might have. If you know someone who needs this radio show, even though they don't know they need it, tune in with them any night at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on the Addiction Free Radio Network.
KJIM now concludes another broadcast day. KJIM is owned and operated by Sudbrink Broadcasting. We invite you to join us again tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock with the spirit of 76, KJIM, Thornton, Denver.